Nicholas Ridley, we open the scene on you. You are present at the top of a very tall hill with very sharp and steep edges, like a butte in the middle of a great green plain somewhere, possibly in Britain. You can see for miles around you atop this hill. At the center in front of you is a collection of stones being stacked and worked on by a few others. Kind of like an old pagan totem. They paste and paint lime mortar into the pieces, securing the stones in place. It's quite tall, about 6 feet high now. Some of the workers you recognize, like Simone Deschamps. Others you don't know personally, but somehow feel connected to anyway. There's no obvious way up or down the hill edges. You don't remember when you got here, but you do feel you are where you're supposed to be.
I have no reason to doubt this as a vision of some kind.
It feels very real. The wind, the night air.
Nicholas closes his eyes and listens, really listens, heightening his senses, taking everything.
You heighten your senses, and it's the smell that catches you. It does smell like the earth of Britain. You feel a small hand tugging at your side as you stop to sense.
He opens his eyes and looks toward the hand.
When you look, you see the Prince of Canterbury, Octavia, is reaching, looking up to you and holding a large stone similar in size to the others in the stack. She offers it up to you and begins to speak. I cannot reach.
Nicholas will attempt to take the stone, though he doubts he's strong enough to hold it.
You take it, finding more strength than you thought you would have, or perhaps the stone's lighter than it seems. And once you take it, Octavia joins the others and seems to work at one of the lower stones.
He'll take the stone over to where the others are working and find a place to set it down, up top.
It's easy for you to reach, and it seems like they've already prepared a paste of lime mortar, and you set it gently and firmly into position. Some of the taller people here start to work at securing it in place. You also notice that some supplies have been left out which are unused. It looks like strings and ropes and wires of many materials, colors, all heaped up in a pile. You notice that there are now crows circling overhead, silently.
Who is nearby me right here where I've walked?
Most closest to you is an Eastern European looking woman with something of a slightly scarred face, but otherwise quite comely. She has a hat not local to this culture, and she doesn't seem distressed. She seems quite placid, working beside you. And to your left is looks like a grizzled old man with a large brimmed hat and a wild, unkept white beard. He has a bandage across his head. He looks kind of unkept in general, disheveled.
He'll turn to the scarred woman. Madam. Does she acknowledge him at all?
She continues working. You think you caught her looking to you briefly before she goes back to work. Make a willpower roll. Difficulty 8. So you feel a compulsion start to come over you. 3 successes. You definitely feel that there is more you should be doing here, but you're in control enough to suppress this.
Madam, what is this place? How did we come to be here?
Her mouth starts to open as though in response, but the voice that comes is not from her, but seemingly all around. You realize it must be all the voices in unison. We have come to understand. There's an undercurrent of a different voice combined in this unison.
Do I see any other Canaanites that I recognize who are not Malkavian? He has a theory already.
No. No, you don't.
What is it you seek to understand? He's asking no one in particular now.
And once again, you get this voice, this undercurrent combined with this unison, this kind of symphony of voices. The purpose of their games.
You will find, I think, that I am not so easily cowed as they. Who are you, puppet master?
You know. Make another roll at difficulty 9. The pull is sharper this time. You're only barely in control. You very much want to contribute to this. You feel like adrift in the tides, fighting not to be pulled out and just barely holding on.
He grits his teeth, looking to the stone, so much wanting to help. Answer my question.
So rebellious, so unnecessary.
It is my nature to question.
Good. The woman beside you, this Eastern European woman, speaks up. You hear only her voice. Although she does not stop working, she does speak up alone. What of the ropes? That comes later. You realize that she seemed to open her mouth to give response to her own question. But as before, the voice does not emanate from any one person. And you catch yourself mouthing the same words.
So we are at the mercy of your games. Or are they really even here? Is it just me and you?
There's a long pause of silence. You hear maybe the distant flap of a crow above, until you hear Octavia's voice from the other side of the tower. You need not fight this. Our understanding leads to all understand.
Your Majesty, surely you are strong enough to throw off these shackles.
She knows they are not shackles.
What are they, damn you?
This is the way we teach.
So I'm to learn a lesson then. Very well. Nicholas will start to help with the wall. He doesn't think he can hold out for another one of those mental onslaughts.
You find almost an ecstasy in the relief of joining the work, of going with the flow. You don't even need to think about what you're doing. Your hands almost move of their own accord. You realize that everyone around you seems to work in perfect harmony with you. As one arm extends a brush or a tool, your arm reaches out to take it, all working as one. You go about this for some time, securing stones in place. You briefly look up from your work as you notice the crows again getting louder, dozens of them now. One of them starts a swooping descent, circling around, getting closer to the tower. It finally descends enough to close in, and it closes in on you. And as it reaches you, you hear its caw. It's a very long sound. It seems to blur your senses. You lose sight of what you're working on, even though you feel you are still where you need to be. You hear the caw again, and you come to. You realize you are no longer out in this field. You are in London again. It's raining now. You remember you just left the Tower of London with Elined and Robert, and you had departed to follow after the Anarch Captain Saraceno. But that was... how long ago? Maybe hours or longer.
But a little disoriented, Nicholas looks around for another body wandering the streets.
It's gotten quite late. You don't see many people out in the streets. Once in a while you'll see a guard pass by with a torchlight, but most honest folk have gone indoors now, especially with all this rain.
Blast it. Am I still near the Tower of London, or have I found myself someplace else?
No, as you think about it, you remember making a little bit of a distance away from Robert and Elined and starting to go down this alley towards where you thought Saraceno had gone just a few moments ago. And then it's as if a chunk of time was just lost.
Feeling a nervousness that he does not appreciate, Nicholas will begin making his way back to Elined's manor.
All right. You make your way back to Elined's manor. You return and realize it has been, well, it must have been at least 5 hours since you departed. Because as you return, you notice the shade of light in the skies much closer to dawn than you realized. Elined, you were just about to head to your chambers to sleep, in fact, when you passed by and realized that at some point Nicholas returned this evening after having been gone quite some time.
And did your attempts bear any fruit?
Elined, he says, forgive me. His eyes look haunted. Something happened.
Would you like to elaborate on that?
He nods his head slowly, looking this way and that. I was following Saraceno, and I became lost. I don't expect you to understand. It was something akin to a fever dream, if canines were possible of such a thing.
Her expression falls and goes, well, your clan is known for visions and the like, but that places more importance on getting word to Cortez.
I was not the only one lost in the dream. Simone Deschamps was there. And Prince Octavia, of all people. I do not think they were just a vision. I think they were sharing a vision.
Do you think this was simply to occupy you? Or is there something more to it?
If they wanted to keep me off of Saraceno's trail, there are better ways. I only now just awoke. How many hours has it been since you last saw me?
Well, you've been gone for the rest of this night, so 5, perhaps?
Blast it. I'm not prone to visions of this nature. It means something. We were building a wall, either to keep us in or to keep something else out. I don't like it when you look at me that way.
It
I
is
told
not
you.
judging on your part. It is more the fact that my great uncle, as far as lineage, vampiric lineage goes, is potentially in danger by the person that was set free. But visions, they are not something I ever claimed to know about. Heard of people having them, yes, but
This is terribly vexing. Not only has Saraceno gotten away, as you say, putting your uncle at risk, there is another hand on the chessboard.
that is something I have come to expect. The longer we live our own lives, the more people come out of the woodwork and happen to have their claws on something.
I cannot let it lie at this. Simone will tell me nothing. I must make my way to Canterbury with haste, to seek Octavia's counsel.
If that is what you must do, that is what you must do.
She will know what to do. I leave on the morrow.
Very well. Unfortunately, I cannot accompany. I have business elsewhere.
I understand. And I would not ask you to. I don't know what I'll find. If you wish, Robert and you and I can meet before I depart to make any plans that need made.
Speaking of Robert, where is he?
I was going to go talk to the prince.
Okay.
That was 5 hours ago. If you want to be back, you can be back.
Oh yeah, okay, and he'll be back.
All right. As though
Are you gonna do the before? Are you gonna do a scene with what he told the prince, or just kind of hand wave it?
We can definitely open a scene for that.
Okay. Well, assuming he doesn't piss the prince off, yeah, he'll be at this.
All right. As though on cue, Robert makes his way descending down the foyer steps, perhaps hearing the disturbance.
Well, from the looks of things, you won't need to wait until tomorrow for a meeting.
Oh, Robert, good. And Robert sees the same thing. Nicholas looks more haunted than you've ever seen him, which is saying something for one of his bloodline.
What troubles you?
A vision.
Of?
Of that I'm not certain. Myself and a number of other Canaanites were there, doing the work of another who was unseen. Known only because it made us speak with the same voice.
What kind of work?
Building a wall.
A wall.
I realize how it must sound, but I'm not mad I told you that.
What else stands out in your vision?
Simone Deschamps was there, and Octavia, and a number of others I did not recognize. We wanted to do its work. It was ecstatic, almost transcendent.
Transcendent. Can you explain further?
When we were working together, we worked as one. We need not speak any words. Each of us knew what the other needed. We built a wall in silence, until crows circling above came near, and I woke. 5 hours since the last I was conscious.
Intriguing. And what do you wish to do with this vision?
I will seek Octavia's counsel in Canterbury.
Are you now? I did plan to make a quick visit there, perhaps.
I leave on the morrow. How soon can you be ready?
That works. To be quick about this business would be best, as we are needed north.
In fact, it would serve me well. You have more resource than I do. you can assure us safe passage.
That I could.
Good. Good. It is set then. Until tomorrow. And he'll turn around with his coat sweeping behind him and make toward his chambers, muttering to himself.
Elined will look over to Robert. You have fun with that. I must make certain that one of my relatives, be them estranged or not, doesn't get himself killed.
Are you speaking of who I think?
The very one Saraceno said he wished to target, yes. I do not want to see him die by something that, well, is subject to means outside of our control.
I thought you may raise more concern at the time, if that is indeed your concern.
At the time, I thought he would be promptly tailed and dealt with.
Very well. Perhaps next we meet will be in the north.
That is what I'm hoping.
Safe travels then.
And to you as well. And with that, she'll turn and return to her quarters.
All right.
Give word to Gertrude that they're going to be leaving.
So you'll be leaving north for Lincoln as Robert and Nicholas depart for Canterbury. You respond to a message. Okay. We will transition. Now, Robert, regarding your meeting with the prince, before I forget about it, you wish to, as far as I understand it, inform him and Mordecai of everything you learned from Captain Saraceno?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So in your meeting that night, do you want to open that scene up for any particulars, or would you prefer to have, broad stroke it?
I'm completely fine with broad stroking.
Okay. So in broad strokes, your answers are informative. Most of them are not surprising. Some of the rumors abounding of Cormac and Thomas were already present in some of the capital cities, and hearing more rumors from Anarch captains leads them to believe that they have some credence. Notes are taken on the numbers and the names. Letters are drafted to ensure that blood hunts are known and spread to the other capital cities in the Covenant, even to Barbaros, who is on the other side of this conflict, as the Anarchs currently are considered a great threat to all upstanding Covenant and former Covenant members. Even in the midst of this conflict, the civil war. Was there anything else you were telling them or wanted to point out or have accomplished at that meeting?
Well, he may try to figure out if Mordecai ever told him about the letter, and if Mordecai has, he would certainly confirm that's what he learned from the vampire hunter. Would also confirm what was going on. And I'm trying to remember that. Yeah. Yes, in Orc.
So you tell him about what the hunter said about all of this?
Yeah, about what he knows about the manipulation out of Nord.
Okay. So you explain that this hunter you captured while you had some neonates doing business in Canterbury gave up information at least about this envoy from the Mercers, and that somehow this was related to some shadowy hand in Norwich, as they had suspected. So as more and more evidence piles up that something is going on, and Ambrose, to his credit, manages not to get too upset by this, as it seems the Gauntlet is at least doing its purpose in finding these things out. He's obviously distressed and vexed that one of the Covenant princes could, in fact, be so compromised. But he swears you and Mordecai to secrecy, that until something can be truly verified, no moves can be made against Norwich. And you tell him that you're going to Canterbury after that?
He would tell the general plan of heading up north to resolve issues between the two princes with the information they've gained. Canterbury probably would not be a priority to mention.
Okay, so all you do is tell him about your general plans to go north, speak to Ragna about freeing her soldiers to respond to an arc threat. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Actually, Robert was going to Barbaros.
Okay, you're going to Chester instead.
He himself will. Elined, of course, is going to York.
But still with the goal of getting Barbaros to at least address the Anarch threat before continuing this feud with Ragna.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Ambrose agrees with this decision and thinks it wise for you and Elined to address both at once, especially if the Anarchs are coming in the summer as they expect, and Norwich can't be relied upon. They need to start solving problems before more start to arise. And so you're dismissed with leave to Chester. Meanwhile, Judith, it's around this time that you have your meeting with Ellen Alice and dispatch a rider with message to London with your newfound information. Unfortunately, it will take a fortnight to reach London. And I have that letter. And so you are writing to Birmingham.
Or would be within a fortnight.
Okay. What is your initial plan right now? So you've sent this letter off. You don't know who it's going to reach or when specifically. So what is Judith's initial plan right now when she reaches Birmingham?
Initial plan would be to lay low once there and kind of just wait until soldiers were inbound. And if they aren't looking like they're going to hold over in Birmingham, she'd ride out to meet the group.
Okay. So kind of in the anticipation that soldiers will be moving north toward Carlisle, you want to intercept them and hopefully
Right.
Elined.
Because Judith's notion is either they're going to be coming from London or from York, and either way they're going to have to pass through Birmingham to get north on the western side of the Pennines.
All right. And let's see. You are traveling from, just looking at a map right now, essentially from Carlisle south. Will you be stopping in Chester to feed?
Not if she can avoid it, no.
Alright, that is going to make things pretty difficult, as you already have limited feeding restrictions. So you can... Go ahead.
If she took the more easterly route, she could ride through Manchester and avoid Chester proper itself pretty significantly.
Yep, you can do that if you want to stop in Chester to feed.
Manchester.
Thank you, Manchester.
Please no, Barbaros no likey.
Okay, so you don't have to worry about feeding then. I will need a wit stealth roll from you. I'm assuming you're trying to be pretty discreet now.
Yeah, she knows she's on some shit lists across Britain at this point.
Yeah, and you're leaving around the end of March, so you'll probably get to Birmingham around mid-April. So you can do a wit stealth standard difficulty.
Yep.
Alright, you continue on your way. You manage to feed in Manchester. I won't need any rolls. You can basically keep your blood pool as is. So that's kind of happening in the background. And the very next night, following the night, Nicholas speaks with Robert and Elined. Everyone departs in different directions. Nicholas, we'll start with you, departing London for Canterbury. Give me one sec. Check my map again. That's not going to take you fairly. That's not going to take you too... Well, are you riding? Are you taking a carriage, or...
Well, Robert is still going, right?
I don't know if he is or not. Sounds like maybe...
Robert is planning on going, yeah.
Oh, he's still going? Okay.
He just didn't mention to the prince that he was going, but he's still planning on doing this quick trip and then heading up to Chester.
Okay. I think you're a little less wealthy than you were, but probably still wealthy enough to have carriage fare. Your estate is still in shambles without Francois de Masson to manage it. But yes, you still have enough resources to get a ride down south. And so it'll take you maybe 4 days before you reach Canterbury. And Elined, you are going north to Lincoln?
Yes.
With Gertrude in tow.
Yep.
Okay. It's about 130 miles. That'll take you 9 or 10 days. Weather's starting to improve, but in the end of winter, beginning of spring, it's still very muddy. So I'm going to say it's more like 10 days. Alright, then we will address what's going on in Canterbury first. Deciding how much I want to do in scene versus broad strokes. Where does Robert plan on having them stay when they arrive in Canterbury? Because you also sent your 2 ghouls that way also. Are you planning on going back to Cornelius' manor?
That is where he was planning, yeah.
Okay. So you're very likely to actually come across your 2 ghouls since you're only a few days away. And Nicholas, your plan is basically to, as soon as you get to Canterbury, to go and speak with Octavia at the first opportunity.
Yes. Does he know what Robert intends to do, though?
Robert would probably. Well, of course, he'll tell him that he wishes to speak with Octavia as well. But he's mainly going to visit a friend for information that could help with peace talks.
For some reason, Nicholas seems interested in this.
Which is Nicholas Prime.
He'll ask as many questions as you'll let him. Who you're going to visit, what exactly they're going to accomplish. All in his very dry way, as if he's prodding you with a needle.
I'll mention he can introduce, but he'll wait until they get there.
All right. I think I know how we'll open the scene. The two of you. Give me one moment. Okay. So we will transition scenes as we follow Nicholas and Robert to Canterbury. Nicholas, have you ever been to Canterbury before this visit, would you say, in your times here?
Probably never, to be honest.
So the sensation you get, which Robert is very familiar with now, of approaching and entering the city of Canterbury, weighing down upon you as though the very air was filled with stone, and a very similar guilt as when you stared into the eyes of the hunter. This whole city palpates this radiance which is difficult to endure, uncomfortable. I will take a willpower roll from both of you. Difficulty, we'll say standard. See 4 successes for Nicholas. I just needed Robert.
Oh, I'm sorry, what, a willpower roll?
Yep, standard difficulty.
Is that full or current?
Current. One success. Alright, so the both of you are able to tolerate this. Nicholas, once you adjust to it, you find that it's little more than a mild nuisance. Robert, you kind of dread being here because you feel the weight as though it's brand new. And you're able to shrug it off, but being here too long might start to wear upon you even more. But Nicholas, Robert leads you through the city of Canterbury, and he brings you to a fine home close to the center of the city, and not too far from the cathedral. It has nice, large wooden double doors, and as you enter, it has a very nice entrance, very decadent inside. And the two of you step into this foyer. And actually, Robert, as you're kind of leading him in, you see that a couple people come to see who's entered this home on their own accord. And you see your two ghouls, Guida Free and Heather Hurley. Ah, what good fortune. He's back.
It's wonderful to see you both.
Aye. Roads are a bit more treacherous than I remember.
Hopefully you didn't run into too much trouble.
Oh, some brigands, but... well, ever since I started to follow you, I feel the strength to take on 10 men. It was quite impressive. Who is your friend, my lord? Heather kind of looks over to Nicholas.
Oh yes, this is Nicholas Ridley.
Looks a bit sickly. Can I fetch you some soup, dear?
It is not soup that I need.
Well, I do know a few of the girls around here, if that's what you prefer.
Truly. Perhaps you could arrange a meeting. Later.
She suddenly has an expression of regret on her face.
Don't worry, my dear, I won't bite. You.
In any case, what brings you this far east, my lord? I thought I would bring message to you.
Couldn't wait very long. It's fortuitous that we've met. What information has been shared with you?
Oh. Precious little, I'm afraid. Our host, Cornelius, is quite tight-lipped about the whole matter. When I arrived, he said he would not entrust information to a manservant.
I see. Then I've made the right choice.
Robert may not notice, but when the name Cornelius is mentioned, Nicholas stands up a bit straighter and is more attentive than he was before.
He is out for the evening at this time, though I expect he will be back by dawn.
The first stop should be Prince Octavia.
Guide Free kind of looks over to Hurley, or Heather Hurley. I've come to understand that's the lady in charge. She seems to nod a couple of times, wide-eyed.
Yes. Part of the Covenant, but she is ruler of these lands.
She's much littler than you would expect.
Don't spoil everything now.
Is there anything I can do for you tonight, my lord?
You may accompany or... Yes, accompany me.
And me as well, my lord. Heather looks hopeful.
Indeed. Both.
They both seem to beam with excitement and follow after you. Where do you take them?
Taking all of them and Nicholas to see Octavia.
All right. Give me one moment. Alright, the group of you, 4 of you, leave this home back into the streets, back in the direction of Nicholas. What you find ends up being not exactly a cathedral, but another theological establishment connected to a hospital, you come to learn. Guide Free seems to have learned enough about this town to give something of a mini guided tour to you, and somewhat to Heather as well, as the group of you pass through. You are led again through the long and dark hallways to the actual hospital. And familiar for Robert, but perhaps not for Nicholas. You enter the base of this large tower with the spiral staircase that winds around the wall. And Nicholas, as you enter, you can sense on some preternatural level that there are fractures in the minds of all the people in this tower. You're not sure how you're aware of that, but you can just sense the chaos of their minds and their humors, and you can hear the sounds of their wails and their laughter. When you enter the base level, you see A young woman, looks like a nun, perhaps, is coming down the stairs. Robert, you recognize this to be Sister June. She looks interested, curious, as she descends and finds a group of you.
Are you there, Vicar?
Oh, wow. I was muted. How long was I muted?
Yeah, you're
The
muted
whole time.
the whole time.
Okay.
Everything.
Jeez. Okay.
You mentioned wait 1 minute and that was it.
Dang.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Nicholas, you are brought to the hospital in Canterbury, and Robert leads you through this theological establishment, through multiple hallways, passing through a heavy iron door into a much darker and more grim tower. And as you enter, Nicholas, on a preternatural level, you feel some broken connection to the people in this tower. Like you can feel the fracture in their minds and their humor, even as you hear the sound of laughter and crying from above you. There's this long staircase that spirals the wall going up, leads to floors above. You can see some people looking down. And so, when you are entering this base level, it's not very long before you see what looks like a sister of the church is descending. Robert, you recognize that this is Sister June, a ghoul attendant to Octavia, and something of a sexual predator, as you don't often see Guy Defree recoil at the sight of a woman, but you do see him flinch a bit when she starts walking down, although a pleasant smile crosses her face. Ah, Lord Robert de Vere. I recognize you.
I would be insulted if you did not.
I'm pleased you brought your guest back. We did miss him.
Unfortunately, he will be staying close with me. I'm sure you understand.
Well, should he need some bed rest, I have just the thing. I imagine you would be wanting to see my mistress.
You are correct. Is she busy at the moment?
She is with the infant. I will see if she can be disturbed. She smiles politely and starts to depart, still on this base level and going off into one of the back rooms. You end up waiting maybe 10 minutes before the door opens again. And as in times past, you see a small child of white hair and piercing blue eyes, the Prince of Canterbury, Octavia. Once again holding what looks like a very small infant in her arms, kind of heaped over her chest and shoulder. And she walks forward into the center of the base of this tower, in front of this large statue of an angel. She looks at each of you in turn, waiting perhaps for one of you to speak.
Nicholas defers to Robert. He is the Lord of the Gauntlet.
Robert will step forward and greet Octavia. A fine evening, is it not, my prince?
Much transpires, which I would attend to. What business do you bring, Lord de Vere?
Much has transpired, but first I came to introduce my companion here, Nicholas Ridley, working for the Gauntlet.
We have met in the past.
Your Majesty, he says, bowing at the waist. And the present, I think. He narrows his eyes slightly, seeing if there's any recognition in hers.
Her face is like a statue. It gives no acknowledgement of any social cues whatsoever.
He's alright with that. That's his kind of lady.
He spoke of a vision that included you. I thought it'd be best that you both speak.
Her eyes go from Robert to Nicholas, bouncing this small child in her arms.
First things first, Nicholas is going to try to determine if she's actually holding a living baby. Out of a morbid curiosity, if nothing else. He'll heighten his senses and try to catch the scent or sound of a baby.
Alright, make a perception alertness at a distance and with a few other people kind of creating ambient noise around you. This can be difficulty 8. But you can lower that with your auspex. Two successes. You note that it is animate, but it does not have the sound of breath.
For once in his long existence, Nicholas is alarmed. Surely she hasn't. But he lets that thought pass from his mind for the moment. Last night, in the 5 hours before dawn, you were in a vision. Was it truly you who was sharing it with me?
Are you so certain this was a vision and not a memory?
I never forget anything, Your Majesty. I had no recollection of that place before I found myself standing there.
Nor would you, unless it served a purpose.
Then you do know of what I speak. What was the meaning of it? Please, I beg of you, tell me.
It is not my lesson to teach. That which you recall has been allowed to you purposefully by something greater than I, or any of our kind.
Certainly don't mean it was a vision from God.
I doubt that God concerns himself with our trials.
And what is there greater than we? Are we not the apex of the human species?
There are many greater than we, and older. Things without form. I have come to understand a voice in the Vitae. In time you may recall more, as this voice deems it appropriate, just as I was allowed more.
And what if I don't want it?
I would be cautious of fighting yourself. That way lies madness. She bounces her baby a couple more times.
I had hoped I could learn more from you. You are far older and wiser than I, but you speak in riddles.
Thin is the line between a vision and a memory, Nicholas Ridley. Are you so certain what you experienced was very recent and not many moons ago? Perhaps years.
Nicholas's face etches into a frown. Then what am I to do? Wait for it to come again? This time holding me captive until the sun take me?
If that is what you must experience to understand.
Thank you, Your Majesty, for at least deigning to answer my questions. As perplexing as your answers might be, I will think on them, and perhaps find answers of my own.
I recall and feel your resistance. I would counsel you to trust in your Vitae.
What an odd statement, but he doesn't say anything. He simply nods. Thank you, Your Majesty.
She seems to give no recognition of being thanked, but her eyes go over to Robert, as though waiting for him to say anything.
I trust things here have been peaceful.
No.
Are you concerned about the Anarch or Mercer threat?
My only concern is the safety and purity of the city. Your meddling among the kind which hunt us draws their ire. I know of those young in the blood whom you sent.
Yes. They were to bring in the hunters for questioning. Has their ire grown so great?
To attempt to capture one of them is to wrap one's hands around a barrel of oil amidst a forest fire.
If this has caused any undue trouble for you, please let me know and I will do what I can to assuage it.
We have adjusted to the increased threat. But the hunters and their kind are difficult to eliminate. I would have you be cautious in any further attempts of interfering with them.
I do not expect need for that to arise.
As you say.
Do you all have any interest in the investigation, or shall we take our leave?
What word would you bring me?
Nothing concrete yet, but the hunter that I was able to question pointed at interference from Norwick. Does any of this surprise you?
No. I suspected influence from within. Sebastian is a likely candidate.
I see. If only we had your insight. We shall not stay long and hopefully not rile up any more hunters. The road calls us north to settle the dispute between Barbaros and Ragna.
"'Tis a fool's errand. But I wish you fortune."
That I appreciate. Certainly will not be easy, but new recent developments would hopefully sway hearts and minds.
Many signs and patterns suggest closure soon. My only concern is that this city remain pure. I would caution against a direct approach. If Sebastian does indeed feed this, if he is at the heart of this pattern, he will have many eyes and resources to draw upon, likely in every Covenant city.
Do you know much of his agents?
Sebastian is canny, wiles enough to hide from me as he wishes, and that is a rare gift. I suspect he harbors something in his city which draws unnatural power to hide his dealings.
Noted. I have precious little else to add, so I believe now is our time to take our leave.
And with that, she turns and begins walking back into this back room she came from. You can see the head of this infant over her shoulders, the eyes looking at you. big and round, strangely focused. And before long, she disappears behind some doors. Would have thought that little baby would have grown more by now.
You've seen the infant before.
I was stuck here once. He kind of looks up. The circular hall that goes up, staircase going to higher levels. Rather not repeat that. But yes, I was here before.
Huh. You bring disturbing implications to mind. But let us be off.
Yes, with some haste. Heather seems very quiet, watching with some concern, and seems content with following a guy to free out.
Nicholas is very attentive as he leaves the hall, looking to the door through which Octavia, then up the stairs at the other faces leering at them, which he meets with a cold gaze of his own.
Some of them look angry, others look very scared. Some are weeping as they look upon you. But none stop you. And eventually you all make your way out. We will transition to another scene. We will follow Elined a little bit ahead in time. Elined, as I said, it takes you about 10 nights for you and Gertrude to reach Lincoln. As you recall, Lincoln is now ruled by the elder Eden Everly. Is your intent to go directly to your great uncle?
That is not her only reason on being. She has a fabulous cover story. But first things first, she needs to present herself.
Alright. Do you want to open a scene there, or do you want to hand wave that to move on to other scenes?
You can hand wave that.
Alright. You get much flowery language and perhaps veiled, backhanded compliment of your commanding skills in spite of what happened to Douglas by the prince. You are, of course, welcome to stay at your leisure as needed. It doesn't take you very long to dispense with pleasantries and make your presentation to the prince. What then
Yep,
will...
but before she makes her way to her great uncle, she needs to stop by Hugh first.
All right. You find him in the same tower that Eden claims for her own. It takes you some time, but you eventually recall he likes to spend a lot of the time in the small chapel at the base level. There's really no one at the chapel at this hour of the night, and so there's a few candles going, and you hear him making quiet prayers in one of the pews when you enter.
She will wait for his prayers to be done. It would be rude to interrupt.
You hear the murmuring stop, and he crosses himself. He seems to go silent.
My apologies for interrupting.
Please, come and join me.
She will head over to him.
He makes room on the pews. I imagine you did not come all this way just to share prayer.
No, you received my letter, correct?
He bows his head, looking a bit dejected. I did.
My condolences, as she looks down at the ground. I wish I could have done more to help him, but I still do have his ashes if giving him a proper funeral would give you some closure.
He looks up and then over to you. His face is that of an old man, pale and ashen with time. That would mean a great deal to me, in fact.
Well, she'd reach into a... Words are hard! Reach and grab the small satchel that she collected the ashes in and hand it over to him. Or as small as a satchel could be that contains the entire ashes of a kindred's body.
He takes the satchel very gracefully. I thank you for this. I had not hoped to prepare a proper burial. The Prince Everly has been quite demanding of my resources and time. I would owe you a great favor for this. He smiles warmly.
She gives a smile and returns, says it's quite all right. He deserves a proper burial.
I can think of scarce few in these nights who would bother to take the time not only to collect the remains, but to bring them to those who would care. I insist.
Very well. If you have a specific day picked out for the funeral, I would like to attend.
Tomorrow evening, I shall have it done.
All right.
I am to understand the gauntlet grows quite thin.
Unfortunately so. Of the official members that remain, there is Robert and myself. I'm sure you've already heard of Thomas.
He nods a couple times. Tragic that. Then surely in these nights, there must be some way that you could use help.
She pauses and ponders for a moment, but shakes her head. Nothing that comes to mind at the moment.
Should you need it, I have sway with those of my clan across Britain, including that stubborn fool Ambrose.
I will definitely keep that in mind.
You must forgive him. His temper is particularly sharp among us. It stands in the way of his reason more nights than not, I think.
To be fair, with all that happened, I'm surprised his temper didn't flare up more. But I should not speak in such a way.
He chuckles lightly. You have nothing to fear speaking your words here. It was in these walls where Cormac and I confided in one another.
That... I will keep that in mind, but I'm more accustomed to keeping to my own thoughts to myself.
A safe habit, to be sure. Best, perhaps, that you not break it.
Of course. And... I will leave you to your work. I have other business to attend to here as well.
He sets the satchel down and rises from the pew.
She shall as well.
He places a hand on your shoulder reassuringly. I thank you again. I trust I will see you tomorrow evening for the funeral.
Of course.
He gives a brief squeeze before turning and taking the satchel and departing from the chapel.
Alright, and she will turn to leave as well. She will go and get some accommodations for both herself and Gertrude.
Which is easy enough to do. And since it's about 6:50, we'll take our 10-minute break here. And we will... Did I say 10? Is it 10 or 15? It's 10 minute, right?
Typically it's 15. You good though?
15. That's right. 15-minute break, and we'll be back then.
Alright.
Alright, Elined. Focus in on you. You're still in Lincoln. It is beginning middle April 1456. Do you still intend to speak with your great uncle, Cortez de Aruña?
Yes, but getting there and then getting back before the funeral will not be sufficient, so she's going to wait until after the funeral.
That makes sense.
However, she will keep an eye out for any that match Saraceno's description wandering on through.
You tell anybody else about that? You just keep it to yourself?
Knowing the prince here, she'd probably try to use that to her own advantage, so... She'd rather not the prince find out about it.
Alright. You're able to find Sir Hugh the next evening. There's a surprising number of attendants with them. You know, if they're ghouls or just paid lay members of the church helping, but quite an elaborate funeral is prepared for Cormac's ashes, and nothing short of the cemetery of the chapel. Quite a reserved plot to have remains buried here. Otherwise in attendance, an individual you may have not met by the name of Silas. She attends the funeral when she's told about it, and you learn that this is something of a much younger neonate that seemed to know Cormac at least briefly in one of his previous stays here. She shares her own words of regret as well as inspiration for having met Cormac, remarking that it was his words that moved her companion, Pierce Lockwood, to actually do something about what was going on around them. She would not comment much further except to say that he's gone on to do better things. Sir Hugh, for his part, offers a moving eulogy to Cormac, contrasting him and his idealism to that of the jaded cynicism filled in the jihad, but with an encouraging end piece remarking on the willingness of his companion Elined to bring his remains so far and to have endured so much threat and danger to do so, as a signal that there are other people out there, other Canaanites out there like Cormac, who are more than the jihad. Does Elined add anything to this funeral?
No, she feels that it has been gone over quite well, and she is not nearly as eloquent. She doesn't feel that's necessary for her to add anything at this point.
Sir Hugh concludes his ceremony with a long prayer in Latin as his attendants help to bury and cover this coffin with dirt, and he offers you and Silas a chance to symbolically bury him by taking a handful of dirt and dropping it over the coffin, which Silas does without hesitation.
Elined will as well, though. There is some hesitation.
After everything's said and done, the funeral comes to a close. Silas passes by you and offers her condolences for the loss of your companion. And Sir Hugh again thanks you for your contribution, for your willingness to do all of this. And he reminds you that should you ever need his influence, or if you value his counsel, then he is likely to remain within the walls of Lincoln for some time.
She will keep that in mind, and once the funeral is fully concluded, she will... Well, what time of night is it that...
After everything, the night is fairly, not extremely late, maybe half over. Funeral took quite some time.
Not enough time to get to her great uncle, then, for this night, unless we travel during the day as well.
Or you could go there and stay during the day.
That's, Considering his life is potentially in danger, that's probably the best option.
All right. We will transition as you make your way to the castle where Cortez de Aruña waits. You're familiar with this path, you've made it before. It does require some time to speak to the guards to be let into the castle. By the time you get there, there's only a couple hours left of night. But you are ushered into the dark halls of Cortez and brought to what functions as the salon. You were there past. He is waiting in a largely unlit salon, which makes seeing him somewhat difficult, except that the shadows part as you enter, enough that his silhouette and his form become more visible in the ambient light.
She curtsies and says, "It is a pleasure to see you again, great uncle."
I wish I could say the same.
I wish it was on better terms as well.
Little good news has passed since your time here.
Yes, there have been some unfortunate events. I come here because I found out there is an individual targeting you.
He smirks faintly. Which one?
Saraceno.
The name means nothing to me. What did I do to him?
He claims to be one of the, My apologies for bringing this up. He claims to be one of the, chowder that were thrown to the flames. But the name he gave was Saraceno. I can give a general description if you'd like.
Describe him.
She will describe him.
Rodrigo is his name. Or it was. I know of whom you speak. And I know that he survived that night. I've been waiting many nights for Rodrigo to return and claim what is his, if he has the strength to. It was cowardice that I did what I did that evening. Our clan deserves only strength. For only the strong will survive the long nights and the fires. If he comes, he comes. And if his fangs reach my throat, then our clan will be strengthened through his perseverance. And I will have met a just fate.
Were you also aware he was allying himself with the Anarchs?
From what I remember of Rodrigo, he would ally himself with whomever he thought would get him into positions that he wanted.
That does sound quite accurate. He was very willing to throw them to the fire, so to speak. He gave the names of a great many of them.
I'm not surprised by this. That may prove fruitful for him in the long term. That is yet to be seen. How long can one trade allies in? How many years can you scrape by? You can see for yourself. The centuries of my existence has left me with little company, which I trust.
That I understand. Trust is something hard won.
I mean you no disrespect, and thank you for the warning, even if the message perhaps did not have the impact you had hoped.
What you intend to do with this knowledge is your own. I only wish to give you proper warning as to what may happen.
And time will tell if habits such as that serve you in the long term. Perhaps you would have been stronger if you let him destroy me. Take some of my estate, or perhaps aided him. Why did that never cross your mind?
Because I hold no sympathy for Diablerists.
As one who has much more to lose, I think, than you, I find it very ironic for you to take such a stance.
Sorry, what was that? My internet hiccuped.
He said he thinks it's ironic that you would take that stance given the difference in age between the two of you.
I suppose so, but that is the mindset that I've taken with it. It is
I am sure Varano's child will be proud of you. His line did seem to value such things. You are, of course, welcome to stay here for the coming day. He rises out of his seat.
Of course, thank you.
I hope for your sake that the path you have taken leads you to strength and not betrayal.
I intend to see to that.
He stares at you with his pale blue eyes for some time before passing by you. He moves into the shadows and disappears somewhere in the far side of the salon. The walls of darkness seem to ebb around you unnaturally. Any other things Elined wishes to do here?
Outside of a feeling of mild disappointment. Not really. There's no real point in protecting someone who doesn't want to protect themselves. They'll just throw themselves to the wolves later on.
So that is what Elined takes away from this exchange. And the scene will fade as Elined departs to find a room, which fortunately is provided for you. And you have safety and protection for the day at the castle of your great uncle. From here, Elined's plans are to travel north to York.
Yep.
All right. You return back to the city of Lincoln. And you find Gertrude. It takes a few days before you are able to arrange for passage out. But, fortunately or unfortunately, a rider reaches you in quite a rush, out of breath, in fact, with a ledger, a parcel.
She'll open it and see what the contents are.
Is a letter from Mordecai. It seems to be a relay. Another message urgently came in from supposedly Judith. And it elaborates on some of what you knew and some of what you didn't, explaining that Basileus, this character you're just learning about, his influence seems to be farther than what was believed, spreading to Wales and Ireland, and supposedly it was through Basileus and his contacts that Jean-Marc was destroyed using individuals or some group in Ireland. It also details that Ellen Alice, one of the leaders of the Anarch Revolt in Britain, has learned much of this and apparently is willing to agree to a truce with the Covenant, willing to postpone her further attacks and assaults on Covenant agents if this worshipful company of mercers and Basileus can be stopped. Judith reports through Mordecai that she had intended on traveling to Birmingham to hopefully meet with someone from the Covenant with the goal of quickly securing this truce before summer, when the Anarchs are next planning to attack unless they get word that an armistice has been reached. And it seems like all haste was made to reach you with this news.
Does the letter say if if Ambrose has a specific preference as to which method to take?
Yes, it does seem like Ambrose instructs you to have this meeting to at least learn more about what Judith would say, hear more in person about Basileus and the Mercers and how this relates to the death of Jean-Marc. He wants to know more and is willing to hold off if this group or this individual has truly been corrupting or manipulating things for some time now.
That will change your plans a bit. She will send a letter to at this point in time, no, she wouldn't know that. She
Mid-April.
would not know if they're still down there or not. And if she sends it to where Barbaros currently is, the assistant could just open that. So she's just going to change her travel plans to head to that area. The area specified in the letter.
Birmingham?
Yes.
Okay. We are going to be about 2 weeks ahead, at least, of where Robert and Nicholas are. From Lincoln to Birmingham. It is about 80 miles. Take a carriage. You're probably looking at about a week. So now we're talking more like 3 weeks ahead. I would like to give Robert and Nicholas some time to catch up because they could very well change some of this as well. So we will refocus on Canterbury. Following the meeting with the cryptic Prince Octavia, what all are Robert and Nicholas's plans now?
Robert was planning on waiting at Cornelius's place.
To speak with him?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And Nicholas, sound like you were interested in that as well?
Definitely.
Okay. Would you like to open that as a scene, or do you want to get the broad strokes of the meeting?
Down either way, this might be a good scene potential for Nicholas, so it's up to him.
Well, it can be broad strokes, just as long as it's clear that Nicholas will be observing Cornelius and his habits, trying to get a feel for him.
All right. And I'll take a perception empathy from you, standard difficulty. All right, 2 successes. Any specialty there?
Intuitive under perception.
I'll give you that. So 3 successes. All right. Put a pin in that. I'm going to come back to that in a second. It takes you maybe a night. Cornelius returns close to dawn and agrees to meet the next evening. So the following evening, you have your meeting with Cornelius, and it is really just Robert and Nicholas. He does not want any of the ghouls involved. He seems quite paranoid. Let me open up my notes again. So he details some of what you've already heard and knew, Robert. Some of this is confirming what the hunter told you. But he starts really almost at the beginning, which is helpful for Nicholas. You, Nicholas, hear about this kind of group of almost brigands, more like brawlers, that seem to be employed by this bishop, Bishop Louis de Poitiers. And this is the same group that was responsible for capturing Guy de Free, Robert's man, and torturing him for some time. Cornelius details that these agents of the bishop were followed and watched. They have been followed and watched for quite some time over a fairly extensive network of spies and watchers, as his agents can get into the cathedral and have gotten a lot closer look at some of what the bishop has gotten up to. They learned that the bishop, Louis de Poitiers, was in England under false pretenses and was hosting some small and strange group of Christians in a safe house outside the city. A woman in red scholar robes, a knight of some kind who was seen departing the city following some group of neonates, as well as the 2 brothers, Patrick and Brooks McNally. This was a cottage supposedly owned by some older couple. They must have been complicit or coerced into letting this group hide out at the cottage. This group has been in place. This network of spies has been watching long enough to know that when Patrick and Brooks first arrived in Canterbury, they had a captive, and by description it sounds like the same mercer negotiator was taken to this cathedral, and he never really came out. But of note, it did seem like there were messages run between the cathedral and this group in the cottage by a single courier, just a young boy with a donkey, carrying vital pieces of information. And so Cornelius has learned of the location of this cottage where perhaps the rest of these Christian hunters are actually hiding out. And through his interrogation of the bishop himself, who was captured, it sounds like perhaps a couple of months ago. Let me review my notes. Through his interrogation of the bishop himself, Cornelius learned that this must be some kind of cell of hunters holed up in the cottage, part of some larger organization. As for the Mercers, again, Robert, you hear much of what you've already confirmed. It seems like these hunters, when they were interrogating the Mercer man, they learned of Norwick, this Tower of Talons. They learned of Basileus. But much of that after that point, Robert, you've heard from other sources.
What was the fate of the bishop?
The bishop is still alive. He's been kept alive by Cornelius. Initially, the bishop was kept in very nice holdings, for when your neonates came to detain him, the laws for clergy are different than for common folk. When common folk are imprisoned, it's quite brutal. When clergy are imprisoned, it's more like house arrest. But Cornelius had enough sway and enough contacts in the city and the cathedral that he was transferred out discreetly to more controllable and less ideal circumstances for the bishop.
And does he plan on acting against the rest of the hunters?
Asking Cornelius?
Mm-hmm.
At this time he does not, as it doesn't threaten the merchants of the staple. It doesn't threaten him personally. They don't have enough information to target anybody he cares about. And so far as they know, this would never lead back to him. So, to him, going up against the hunters would just be stirring up a hornet's nest. He does kind of muse over the idea of leading them to Norwick or somehow manipulating the hunters as a weapon, but he admits he's rarely faced anything like them and is not eager to risk that. as from all of his reports, from all of his information and intel gathered, these hunters display abilities to resist things that most men would fall prey to. So he's not sure how pliable or easily manipulated they'd be. And before I forget, Nicholas, on your 3 successes, that's quite a full success on assessing his patterns, his movement, his character. The way Cornelius speaks and carries himself, he carries age with him. He seems to have the wisdom and knowledge of someone that is more than a neonate. You think that he has quite a bit of training in the martial arts based on his grace and enough guile to have survived many nights on his own, and apparently is in command of quite a large spy network. Overall, quite dangerous.
Nicholas takes note of this. It will require some cunning on his part to get close to this man. During the conversation, though, he will ask why he's chosen to keep the bishop alive.
He explains that he's worth more alive than dead. Perhaps that there will be other uses for him in the future. A dead body is of little value to him.
Nicholas wants to convince him otherwise.
How would you like to go about doing that?
He's going to insinuate that the bishop causes greater threat to all Cainites if he's kept alive. His contacts will draw heart from the fact that he's still lit, and they might try something foolish to save him.
That's a good argument. You can go manipulation, empathy, or manipulation, subterfuge. I'd also accept expression. Difficulty is gonna be 7.
And my specialty of devious.
Absolutely.
I'm actually going to spend a willpower on this one too before I roll.
Okay. Oh,
Good thing I did.
good call. 1 success with willpower. You can tell he's very cautious about conceding your points, but you repeat the same fears and kind of hit on the same and the correct concerns, maybe pressing the right anxiety, just long enough that in the end he laments that you're probably right. The bishop is more dangerous than he is valuable. You'll have him probably quietly disposed in the next couple nights once arrangements can be made.
Nicholas will make no outward sign that he's pleased by this. He will attempt to remain placid.
Alright, is there anything else Robert wants to do?
How much of Norwick would Robert be able to know?
I don't think you've ever spent any time in there.
He has not.
So, nothing.
Playing around with the thought of sending the hunters up there, perhaps having them chance upon a messenger that would carry a letter that states their comrade was taken up there, but trying to think of a way to direct them to cause damage up there rather than just have them up there. Maybe just that is enough, though.
Do you verbalize that to Cornelius and Nicholas? Are you thinking about it right now?
He'll verbalize it. Otherwise, he would not recommend any action against the other than that.
Cornelius, for his part, says that this group must have been quiet for quite some time. He thinks that they're very cautious unless or except in the outlier incidences like the knight going after this group of neonates. So they can be baited, but overall are quite cautious. He suspects that knight might have been their most bold member. What remains might be more secretive and vigilant. What is Nicholas's response or thought on luring the hunters to Norwich?
Although he personally has no invested interest in Sebastian and his city, the very thought of fomenting such discord does fill him with a sort of devious glee. He'll merely concede out loud, though, that it could create interesting complications for the Covenant. And that if the hunters are taken to Norwich and the prince is disposed of, what if they never leave? How will they install another prince?
Anything to damage his vast resources would be preferable. I suspect these hunters would meet an end, but not without going out in a blaze.
Nicholas will say, I have the sense they're more dangerous than they seem. Had that man in the cell been armed, he might have destroyed all three of us. His blood was like liquid fire.
Liquid fire does not do much to vast armies of ghouls. They are still only human.
Humans are easily swayed.
Cornelius concurs with Nicholas, saying that they're not just human. By his reports, these people do supernatural things, or seemingly supernatural, staying awake for far longer than even veteran military men are capable of, and feats of strength, as though they are propelled onwards by some force of their own. They are not just men.
What do we know of the Cainite population in Norwich? Have you chanced upon there, Nicholas?
You're not asking Nicholas that, are you?
Yeah. I don't recall if Nicholas ever said anything about being up there.
I've never set foot in the city. At least not that I can recall.
And Cornelius?
Cornelius thinks on time.
Are you Midabukar?
Yes, thank you. Cornelius thinks on times back when Jean-Marc still lived and he still attended to him. It was rare that Jean-Marc would deign to enter the city of Norwich, Sebastian City. There were a couple times in the last century that he was there. Let me think. Also, let me look at my notes. What he would remember or have noticed. As far as who he met there, he remembers briefly being at a small Dominican chapel within the walled city of Norwich, a place where nuns care to lepers. He met a few Cainites there, who he assumes are Cainites in hindsight. Let's see here. An extremely devout Cassandra, a woman who seemed to be very pious. He recalls meeting what he thinks was a Scottish man, perhaps a Cainite from the Northern Territories, and someone whom Jean-Marc told him later in hushed tones was in fact a Tremere, banished long ago from London. They met briefly with the prince that night, but he seemed to not have much for a debut, a presentation, or a formality. Sebastian was kind of quick and dirty about speaking, getting pleasantries out of the way, and moving on.
So he would have no clue of how much influence the prince would have over the population there.
No, he has no idea. He met very few Canaanites there and wasn't really socializing at Elysium on his own or anything. He was attending to Jean-Marc.
The collateral damage could be too high. Robert won't commit to manipulating these hunters.
Alright. Is there anything else you wish to do or discuss tonight?
Not at this meeting, for Nicholas anyway.
Okay.
No, nothing else. Robert would perhaps get ready to travel up north now. Business here seems to be concluded.
Alright. North as in Chester.
Yes.
Okay.
Nicholas will be staying for a while. He'll meet Robert in Chester in a few weeks.
Robert will certainly inquire in this because he doesn't see any reason why Nicholas should remain.
Nicholas will tell him that he is enthralled by this city and the strange effect it has on him. And that he wants to get to know this Cornelius fellow a bit better.
Okay. So Robert departs the next night for Chester, while Nicholas remains. And I'm going to switch scenes in a bit to finally get to Judith, but I just want to know, what are Nicholas's imminent plans?
He's gonna see if he can find some place to sleep out the days while he's staying here. Perhaps Octavia has room in her madhouse. He's certainly not intimidated by them.
Absolutely, you have open invitation to stay at the hospital or sanatorium.
And then he's gonna try to get close to Cornelius. He's very patient, though. He's going to do it in the manner of a snake sneaking through the grass, you know?
Alright, that could take some time.
And that's fine with him. He's got patience.
Which sets us up well. If Robert's going to Chester, then I do not anticipate any time continuum issues with Judith. So we will transition scenes to at last catch up with her. Alright, moving north. It is mid-April 1456. Judith, you've been patiently waiting in Birmingham. You know you sent out messages to try and reach Elined, or at least Covenant, so you're hoping that you'll find some of their forces heading this way and you can intercept them. Is there anywhere in particular Judith would have hunkered down at?
I'm thinking. Probably in like a blue-collar part of town. She'd have insinuated herself in with the Thatchers and the seamstresses, being her people and all. Adopted, but still.
All right. That does well to help your feeding habits, certainly. At this,
So it's
go ahead.
more out of the way than the bar.
A little bit more out of the way. At this time, Birmingham is not a very large town. It is starting to grow and trade, but without access to a very close port, and with the roads as they are, it's slow growing. There are perhaps a couple thousand people in the town right now. Dense woods surround the town. And you're able to find one of the inns toward the end of the town where more of the craftspeople congregate, have their homes, many farmers come in. It tends to suit you very well. And Elined, you arrive by carriage soon, somewhere in the middle of April 1456. Where would she first look, or where would she end up?
She'd first check the crowds at the inns.
That makes sense, given that you do know Judith and the places that she does tend to congregate at. Inns are a good start, and fortune favors you tonight, as Judith, you're searching one of these inns, and I'm going to give Judith a chance here. You kind of have more the lay of the land this place more than anybody, so if you want to kind of remain cloaked or discreet while you look for other people, it might be easier for Judith to spot Elined.
Because given timing, she'd begin expecting to see signs of either troop movements beyond the city or some lone individual coming in looking for her. She's definitely on an edge.
Yeah, so I'm going to say, Judith, you see Elined long before she sees you. You find a seat in this inn which you've gotten more comfortable in over the number of nights you've been here. So you have a little bit better of a advantage for people coming in now.
In that case, Judith would be seated at a corner table, back to a wall, clear view of the front door and, of course, any servant area in the back, so she can see anyone coming to the room pretty easily.
So you see Elined as she's kind of entering and looking through the crowds. It's early in the evening, there's quite a few people here. Most are drinking merrily.
Judith would get the attention of a serving wench with a silver coin, direct her to send Elined this way, trying to be as surreptitious about it as possible so as to not draw undue attention.
Alright. Easily enough done. One of the wenches with 2 fistful of large pints of ale kind of takes the coin and continues moving on. And Elined, it's a few minutes of looking through the crowds unsuccessfully when, out of the crowds, one of these women with drinks in her hands passes by. Lady wishes to speak with you in the corner. Kind of gestures with her head, with her hands being full. Continues on.
She'll head off in that direction then.
When you draw close, you do see a figure that looks familiar. You think you found Judith at this table on the back.
Judith's hair is down. It's very much meant to look like she's part of the unwashed masses rather than an individual of means, as opposed to being pulled back in a tidy bun or secured at the nape of her neck.
I heard your side is willing to talk.
Judith looks a bit dismayed. Haven't you been paying attention? I've always only ever served England.
That is what you've always said, yes.
And I've finally gotten one side of this damned conflict to pay attention.
And you,
What
through
does it-
some miracle of fate, have been able to convince Ambrose to lend a listening ear.
I suppose that's a step in the right direction at least. What
Yes,
will it
and
take to get him to lend a few thousand men-at-arms?
That I am uncertain of.
It was meant to be a rhetorical question. I'm sure he sent you with your own questions.
Of course he did. He wants to find out what more you know of... Well, you know the individual.
Very well. We've been manipulated from the start. Possibly even before we were even in the picture, in a grand way. A prior in Dorset named Damon sent word on the Mercer's behalf to our friend Ellen that we would be coming to Dorset to investigate the fall of our predecessors, which Damon claimed credit for orchestrating as well, at the Mercer's behest.
Of course, there's someone pulling string.
There's always someone pulling strings.
Exactly.
But better the devil you know. I have a contact in Wales who is able to corroborate most of what Damon said. Damon sadly will not be repeating his testimony.
That means either he's gone into hiding or he is no more.
He's currently fertilizing a river in Dorchester. He said that either I died in that alleyway, or we both die, eventually. I chose eventually. What were you able to find out about the head of the Mercers?
That is more Robert's investigation.
Judith cocks her head to the side, obviously not buying it. Is that the game we'll play?
Less a game and more that he is likely to know more details than I.
You mean to say that you know nothing other than what I've sent?
I'm going through my notes, unless I'm in the wrong section of it, I believe that all she knows is what was said.
Weren't you in the room when he was interrogating the knight?
Alright, the night dude. Well, there was a brief interrogation I was present for. Outside of that, I have nothing new as far as information for...
What became of the interrogated individual? Any details? Something?
He says that there is a Tower of Talons in Norwick from where the Mercers came from.
Out of curiosity, would Judith be able to place the name with any familiarity?
I'm trying to remember.
Like, I know she hasn't been in Norwich proper during the game, but
Yeah, you don't know anything about Norwick per se. I'm just trying to remember if Anaf Nemtet said that or not.
all he said was a tower in Norwich.
Okay. Then that might strike your memory. I think he described a ruined tower.
Good. Then at least Ambrose has given you enough leash. Maybe it'll be enough to save us. I'm sorry to be quite so curt. I'm rather on a tight timetable. Helen has given us until July to come to terms.
I have heard. Ambrose also wants to know what all you know of the death of Robert's late relative.
I know that powerful individuals from outside the Pale in Ireland were ferried across the Irish Sea and deposited in Lincoln to achieve those ends, and then ferried away. And I know those individuals outside of the Pale have been harrying those inside the Pale quite a bit of late. Both Damon and my contact in Wales have, again, corroborated this. Though the Welsh Cainites did most of the heavy lifting, Damon arranged passage at behest of the Mercers.
I doubt your Welsh Cainite will be pleased with you speaking with me.
No, he's not your greatest fan. I must apologize for Douglas as well. It was necessary.
So you claim.
I believe that Tristan sent me there, or us, to Douglas, to silence Anaf Nemtet before he could share what he shared about Basileus. Had I felled Anaf Nemtet, then those details would have never come out, or only after a hard-won fight. And then I would have been killed immediately afterwards, leaving no trail behind. Because I stayed my hand and prevented the invasion, we know what we know now. As I said in my letter, I don't know if Tristan was implicitly aware, or if he too was being manipulated. It's safer to assume that he's at least a part of the ploy, even if not knowledgeable of it.
Hmm. Well, I do have some people that might contact me from outside the Isles. They should tell me if they see him or not.
I would propose the following. All ports blockaded. All Mercer vessels held at port by whatever means necessary. And whatever forces are available marched on Norway. That will never happen.
Of course it won't. Especially with...
Muster what forces you can, with or without the blessing of Ambrose and the Covenant. If you must carry message back to them, let it be this. I will personally argue for a cessation of conflict between the Anarchs and the Covenant, in return for installing Ellen Alice as Prince of Norwich once Sebastian is removed.
That... I am uncertain how they'll go with that, but...
It gives everyone what they want.
It does. And... Ambrose is taking this threat seriously enough to send someone to listen instead of going with his response of sending someone to end others.
Mordecai seems to be a calming influence. I hope that's for the better.
As do I.
There is a caveat, however. The Anarchs will not accept Norwich if it is at the end of a chain to the Covenant. Norwich will remain sovereign. An allied state, but not a subordinate one. Equal, but separate. They have given me leave to speak on their behalf, but I did not give them these details. You still there?
Yeah, I'm still here. Sorry. I had it muted for a while. I was hacking up a lung.
Put it back.
Yes. I will see what I can do with talking to the princes. And if you're ever in the area of Lincoln, Cormac has an official grave now.
If all goes to plan, I expect to be neighbors. As I doubt the Covenant will welcome me with open arms back into its good graces. These will be the prices we pay.
There was a way to get you welcome back, but I doubt it would be with open arms. And I doubt it aligns with the current circumstances.
Judith almost looks amused. Do tell.
It was mentioned after the incident that the only way that you would be welcomed back is if you brought back the heads of some of the higher-ups within the Hanok movement, but with this current deal on the table, I see it more as a moot point.
The Covenant lacks the resources as a whole to take on the Mercers at their stronghold. Norwich is a walled city. We should expect to lose at least a third of all forces thrown against it. The only way we hope to stand a chance is with every Cainite able-bodied and engaged.
Hence why I mentioned it was a moot point.
I don't know if the Scots will march quite that far south, but I aim to try to convince them.
Well, I can help with forces from at least one front.
Yes,
Provided I'm giving the go-ahead.
I'm sure that Ragna has more than sufficient manpower, but I would recommend minimally tapping her resources in the event that our quarry seeks to cajole Barbaros into a feint at her border.
Yes, it would leave her quite open. And Barbaros, as we've seen, is very much a pawn.
Suggest to Ragna that this elder has been manipulating Dorothy behind her back, as well as... I'm trying to remember her name, hold on. As well as the Viscount Anselmus fomenting discord within her realm. Let her put the pieces together in that particular puzzle from there.
Is there any evidence to this, or... Well, have someone said this, or is this speculation after putting pieces together?
Speculation only. I know that Robert and Dorothy met often in secret, and I know that Dorothy greatly resented Ragnar. I also know that Anselmus sought aid from the Scots as well, potentially to overthrow Ragnar.
If they are truly manipulated by the same source, that means by extension Robert himself is. Which is amusing, considering what he's currently chasing.
I found the notion ironic. I don't know that I'd say amusing.
Suppose that would be a better term.
We have 3 months to reach an accord. Hopefully, when next we speak, some kind of wrought iron deal can be wrenched from the jaws of defeat.
I will make haste in delivering the information then.
If you can, send scouts, send spies and individuals who will be below notice into Norwich. Get the lay of the place, identify troop movements, positions. People often underestimate the value of spies in warfare.
Of course. Oh, by the way,
Judith arches a brow.
there was a certain individual that gave a great list of names to us.
I thought there might be eventually. How many were a surprise?
Sorry, what was that?
How many of those were a surprise, exactly?
There were a few names that I did not know. Quite a few.
Such as?
Well, your typical people in power have been known now, and beyond that, I believe the other names were hand-waved outside of Timbers, Ellen, and DeFore, correct?
He also relayed the rumor of Cormac and Thomas being the one to actually capture the Von Danzig.
Yep.
Would she relay that as well?
Yeah. Might as well at this point.
Well, he didn't much care for Thomas anyway. It's best that he's deceased.
Of course, it is best that he's deceased. Though as far as I know, I don't believe this rumor has been anywhere outside of, well, the people it was given to. Though, it is entirely possible it could be spreading among the younger ones as
I wouldn't bet overmuch on that. Unless you're willing to go into an Elysium and find out. But
I would rather avoid those.
you never were the type.
Never really, no.
It's a different kind of warfare, that. But it is warfare nonetheless. Instead of reading stratagems and enemy troop movement on a field of battle, one reads posture, tone, all the little quirks and expressions that flutter across the face of someone who's been caught out.
Yes, and well, so much simpler just to meet people on the field of battle instead.
But you're less likely to die from being snubbed at Elysium than you are being stabbed through the chest.
I think I'd rather take the sword through the chest than have to deal with Elysium.
Judith shrugs a bit. So be it. Identify what resources can be moved promptly and subtly to Norfolk and positioned outside Norwich. Siege engines would be ideal, but we may have an alternative to that.
What is this alternative?
I call him Jack.
Ah, yes, Timbers. Well, unless there's anything else you'd like to add, I should likely get this back as soon as possible.
I will explain to Ellen that the Covenant will accept no less than a complete cessation of all hostilities at the end and conclusion of any battle at Norwich.
I'll be sure to bring that up then.
And the Anarchs wish to have Norwich, once it's cleaned of unpleasant influences.
You did mention that, yes.
Shall we meet back here in, say, a month's time? Mid-May?
I will do my best to make that time.
I'll do my best to not meet an ashy end between here and there.
With that, she'll get up from the table and... What time of night is it?
It's relatively early in the evening.
Then she'll set about making arrangements for travel to get word back.
Alright. And the scene will fade on Elined departing, meaning to get word back to the Covenant about terms of truce, and perhaps of assault upon Norwich. As the scene closes, we will end our session here, and we will pick it up again at our next game. Good game.
Cool, yeah.
Glad we got some Judith time in the very end.
Yeah. Kind of getting tired of being the fucking covert op here.
That's tough. It definitely is tough.
Hot garbage.
What?
Nothing.
One experience all around. give out some extra experience for people doing interesting and cool stuff. Either that or willpower. I'll come back to that. I'm really tired, I'm really hot, so I can't think very straight. So I'll come back to that. Let's do some entertaining role players. Start with Judith.
I kind of want to give it to Nicholas. He's being all snaky snake.
He's definitely sneaking around.
Serving a hidden master.
He must have watched Sneakers. How about Nicholas?
I have to give it to Ellen at this time. That scene with you was awesome.
I like that too.
Kind of a nice send-off for Cormac.
Judith was a sad.
How about Elined?
I'm gonna give it to Robert for seriously considering sending a bunch of superpowered hunters into this.
What could possibly go wrong?
Yeah, the best thing that could have happened is that could have happened while they were having peace talks, and then they turn around and everything's on fire.
Yeah, we totally had this great agreement, and then the city erupted in flames. Good times. Robert, how about you?
Give it to Elined for her scenes with her uncle, so to speak, as well as taking care of Cormac and discussing things with Judith.
Just looking at something. Yeah, I like that too. What was Elined's takeaway from her meeting with, after going into the trouble of telling him he's gonna get assassinated and being like, it's okay?
Elined is disappointed.
I'd be a little disappointed too. That makes sense. So we will see if we ever see Cortez again. Good game, enjoyed it a lot. I feel like I was like not having a stroke, but there were multiple times where it was like I can't even think, it's so hot.
Don't you have air conditioning?
Mm-hmm.
No,
He lives in the Northwest. No, they don't have that there.
you don't.
I live in the West, and they're not common here, but I have like swamp coolers.
Yeah, that's about your only option in the Northwest.
And I'm nice and cool.
It's all good. But yeah, I definitely think there was some cool stuff that happened today, so I want to think about it. I might be handing out some more experience, like with Elined and Cormac's burial. I like that a lot. So let me think about that some more, and we'll pick it up again probably next week.